Hello friends and welcome to a Position 4 tier list. We're going to talk about the best soft supports in the game, in my opinion of course, based on my games, experience, Dota, data, all that stuff, right, watching your games. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments, let me know. Let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. Lion and Natures, they're going to be S tier. There's a couple others I think are S tier, but if you've been playing Dota or watching Dota, you've seen these heroes in just about every game, at least one of them. They pretty much do the exact same thing, whether you're position 5 or 4. So like for Lion, you have crowd control, the stuns, the hex, you have the mana drain to remove mana from the enemies and give it to your allies. Like that's a big part of it, right? The ultimate for some of these early game kills, just like every single game, ask yourself like, when do I not want stuns and when would I like mana being in our favor than the enemy's favor, right? It's just like every single game it works and you can just first pick it, and whether he's 5 or 4, he kind of like does the same thing. It's almost always like Tranquil Boots into a Blink Dagger. Maybe like if we want to say there's a difference, position 5, right, you typically get a few less like levels and gold than the position 4. So maybe in 70% of games, like Lion will rush Blink, and then other times he'll play more backline, just go Shard, Wraith Band, stuff like that, maybe Force Staff Glimmer. Whereas as the position 4, like 90% of the games he goes Blink first and then the Shard build. So it's really quite similar between both roles. For Nature's Prophet, what game do you not want to make the enemies all have to buy Quelling Blades? You don't want global pressure. You don't want your team to be able to pick up extra farm because he can farm places they don't want to be and still teleport to fights. You don't want someone with a super flexible item build. It's like, oh, we need this, I'll buy it, right? Every single game, it is good. And again, it's very similar between 5 and 4. He just tends to pick up a little bit more gold to a lot of gold as a position 4. But because of his whole, like, I can farm places that our team can't usually be, even as a position 5, he ends up quite rich. And that's why these roles are pretty similar, I would say, whether you're playing 5 or 4. Moving on, Spirit Breaker has been getting some nerfs. He was very much an S tier, probably the S tier hero just a couple patches ago, but since then has been getting some nerfs, still quite good. With this larger map, just the global presence of Charge of Darkness, very strong. The damage he brings is a little slower. That's part of the nerfs he got. His ability to one-shot creep waves, that got delayed by a few levels / few items. He still needs to hit this movement threshold before he can do that. But ultimately, you will reach that point. And in a pub game, you guys know it, tends to go long. You tend to have people scatter around the map. So Spearbreaker still feels like every game it's pretty useful. Now, I will say there are more mobile heroes that are meta right now. People like Ember Spirit, Puck, who can dodge Spirit Breaker's ganks in the mid lane, and he doesn't like when that happens. But on the flip side, he does enjoy those kind of heroes on his team because, hey, I've placed deep wards in the enemy jungle. I see a guy, I'm going to charge in, and the mobile hero goes, yeah, I'll be right there with you. And so it makes his ganks a little bit easier when he has those heroes on his team. So overall, I think the hero changes have been kind of like net even for him. Plus, he's a very good versus Nature's Prophet, who, as we've mentioned, is being played in quite a lot of games. What pub game does not need more BKB piercing stuns, along with insane damage in the late game, all the split pushing, right? So still an A tier hero, in my opinion, but because of the nerfs, I am going to bring him down from the S tier. I mentioned the position 5 tier list. Winter Wyvern has been getting repeated buffs, and she's reached a point where she's being played in multiple roles, 3, 4, 5, and she's very good at them. Position 4 Winter Wyvern plays very similarly to position 5 Winter Wyvern, potentially. So you can still do the old Wyvern support stuff, Blink, Aether Lens, Force Staffs, things like that, good ults, all that stuff. But there's a new build right now, Mage Slayer, if no one else on your team is buying it and it looks like a good Mage Slayer game. Position 4 Wyverns are maxing Arctic Burn first and buying a Mage Slayer as their first item after like boots, you know? And then in these early fights, you have this very long attack range and you're applying the Arctic Burn, percent HP damage, along with the Mage Slayer passive, which is both damage and the damage reduction. So that's kind of how you're contributing. From there, you can go back to like Blink, Aether Lens, Force Staff, stuff like that, like back to the support Wyvern. But I have seen people like kind of full in, like, I'm just kind of a core as a position 4, going like Orchids, Witchblades, Aghanim, stuff like that. I will leave it up to you guys if you think you need to do that, but I think I'm kind of a fan of Mage Slayer back into the usual support, but like I said, that's why we like these flexible heroes. If you think you need to, you know, bring the damage for your team, the carry potential, then the option is there. Ever since Tusk got the attack slow aura to his tag team, he's been a very solid hero, still is. Kind of does like old Tusk stuff from there. It's just very difficult to trade with him now when he doesn't have spells, especially in the laning stage. I think that's the part that got buffed up, which before is like very all in if you could get kills or not. But now with the attack slow aura, it feels like, yeah, I can kind of just like trade in the lane. I have a more stable lane, and I still do all the other ganking stuff. I got a lot of utility with the Ice Shard block, the Snowball stun or save, BKB piercing stun off of his ultimate, the repositioning with the Aghanims if you get to that point. Just offers a bunch, I feel like, and so just solid hero all around. Hoodwink received buffs to her Acorn Shot and her Bushwhack in this 7.35 patch, and I think she's been going up since then. Just a lot more damage off those spells, which you typically maxed. I have been noticing some different builds. So like there is Bushwhack max. That's what I think a lot of people default to, but I am seeing people max out Acorn Shot first as well. Sometimes even skipping Bushwhack, not totally, like leaving at level 1 and then even getting points in Scurry. I don't play a bunch of Hoodwink. I am in the works of starting to practice her more to understand this more. So I don't have the complete understanding of when you do which build, but it seems like there's a lot of potential for her, and maybe if you guys play more Hoodwink, you can leave more insight on it. I would say the Bushwhack stun build obviously makes the most sense when you need stuns, but the Acorn Shot seems like there's a lot more damage potential there, farming potential. Scurry max instead of Bushwhack, that's the part I need to play more to understand myself. So I'm not gonna try to go into that too much right here. But I do think she is good, especially with all those Shivas and Veils being built. Her whole magic combo bursting has been very nice. And the Mage Slayer is applied on every Acorn Shot bounce, which is also cool for her. So Dark Willow got some nerfs to her like Midas Aghanims build that we were seeing around that TI patch a while ago. But since then, some like other changes, like 1 base armor, invincible in the laning stage now. She still feels stable as a support, not so much a core anymore. Like the support doing support build rather than the whole like Aghanims right click thing. That part still feels good, especially because we're seeing a lot of heroes build these Shivas and just running at people. And Bedlam, if you didn't know from a previous patch, you can throw on your allies now instead of having to use yourself. So you have this Doom offlaner, Primal Beast offlaner, and Death Prophet offlane. They are running in, chasing someone. You're like, here, have more magic damage on top of you. Here's this Bedlam. All these mobile heroes that are being picked up. You have so many different forms of crowd control, which are not instant, admittedly. So that's where like something like Line is a little better to like blink Hex into the stun. But Dark Willow still provides a lot of crowd control. So as long as someone else on your team can initiate, then she can follow it with a bunch of chain stun. Grimstroke is very good for similar reasons to what we mentioned in the position 5 tier list. Inkswell combos with a lot of these Veil builders, the double Soulbind value from many popular heroes. I will say the reason I think he has dropped from S tier down to A tier, 1, he got various nerfs, but 2, Disperser has become quite popular to build, and Disperser can actually remove Inkswell. So as you're trying to Inkswell run at people, that could potentially just be like taken off, and that's quite sad for you. But I still think he has a lot of good combos. It's just like why he's not S tier right now to me. Pugna as a position 4 still fulfills his mana battery kind of role, but one thing I didn't mention in the position 5 tier list is that with all these spellcasters being popular and he synergizes with them, but then you got all these spellcasters, they don't usually take towers the best. But Pugna kind of solves that with the Nether Blast, so that after you help everyone kill off all the enemy heroes, and they're like, our spells don't work on tower, you're like, don't worry, I got it, Q, 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 and then you help take the towers. So I do think that's quite nice of him. He's still got the whole long range harass in the laning stage, lots of utility with Nether Ward versus the enemy spellcasters, your ultimate doing the same stuff it's been for a while. So still good hero, A tier. All right, Shadow Shaman, I'm a little conflicted on him. Partly, I want to move him down a tier because I think there's a lot of different stuns that make it difficult to get shackles off. Even though Hex Shackle is good versus some of these mobile mid heroes we're seeing, I just think the range is difficult to use when you compare it to others. Like compared to Lion, like he doesn't have to sit and channel this stuff. So like that part, I think he moves down a little bit. But the Aghanims Refresher is a win condition on its own. Always a big fan of that for supports. And in pub games, stuns do tend to be lacking, and because of that, I think it does go up. I personally like him as a position 4 more than a position 5 right now, because you have a little bit more gold, have a little bit more early levels to pick up more points in your shackle early on for a longer chain stun, for people to like finish off the kills, you get your ult sooner, push towers, stuff like that. So I think in pub games he can be like A tier in the right games, but When there's too many meta heroes with these like different stuns in the game, I think he is going to struggle, and like maybe he should be like down between A and B tier, just like in the position 5 tier list. Batrider got buffs to his Flame Break and his Firefly. Those are the two main spells you use as a support. So you have a good laning stage because you're a universal hero, like decent right click, without having to use Sticky Napalm and give away a bunch of stick charges, making aggression difficult. You don't have to do that as much. You just kind of like poke and then wait for the right moment, wait for them to be out of position, knock them back with that slow from Flame Break, run them down with the Firefly. So good laning stage into like a fast blink. So now you can blink, initiate with your ultimate, find those kills in the early game. Later, as the game goes on, it does pierce spell immunity or debuff immunity. The terminology is so hard to get used to. The debuff immunity you will pierce with the ultimate, so you'll contribute throughout the whole game as support Batrider. But you're not really planning to go ultra late game, as Batrider. You're more like this very strong early game to mid game hero. Techy's Sticky Napalm got buffs so that the latch radius and the explosion radius are bigger. This means it's easier to more consistently land it in the laning stage and potentially hit multiple heroes, along with the fact that you are a long-range universal hero for lots of poke, harass. You then combo all of that with an offlaner who will go in and initiate for you, many offlaners right now. So it becomes easy to, here's the sticky bomb into my blast off. Just so much damage for early game kills. And then as the game progresses and your offlaner or your mid very frequently is buying Veil or Shivas, they go in. They increase the amount of magic damage your opponent is going to take because of the Veil Shivas. You come in blasting off all this extra magic damage, and then you drop 3 mines next to them with your ultimate, which, if you forgot, decreases enemy magic resistance, and it stacks. So you have this target who is taking increased magic damage with decreased magic resistance, and they're just getting deleted by the damage Techy's is bringing, along with like any follow-up magic damage after that if they have somehow survived that combo. Venti Spirit as a position 4, doing similar stuff as before. The damage reduction from the W, it has been nerfed, but it's still good. The Q and the W, along with being a universal hero, just gives her a fairly decent laning stage against many matchups. And then as you get your ultimate, which now has the increased either damage against enemy targets or a barrier to allied targets that you're swapping, it just feels very good in a lot of games, both as a position 4 or a position 5. I personally think as a position 5, she's a little better because frequently when you aggressively swap or you swap to save, you probably are dying. So I'd rather lose the position 5. But that's kind of the nice thing about position 4 Venge, because you're getting a little bit more gold. I do see position 4 Vengeful Spirits buy an Aghanim, so that when they swap aggressively or to save and they die, they come back as an illusion and they're still able to contribute that way. For the record, you don't have to go that build as a position 4. It's just something I do see more often in position 4 than position 5. You can still go totally normal support items as position 4 Venge, which I guess Freudian slip is going to be quite similar to position 5 Venge, but just you get more items and gold and stuff like that. Nyx Assassin is going into S tier. I didn't really mean to have our like first heroes be S tier and then I'll wait all the way to the end for another S tier hero. Nyx Assassin, laning stage is his weakest part. It's not great. You just have to get by the laning stage doing things like pulls, possibly creep dragging, which is not as popular right now. The stuns to secure creeps while harassing, stuff like that. The fortunate thing is that many offlaners are fairly strong right now, and they are happy if you can just bring like another stun as Nyx Assassin. So you can get out of the laning stage. It is weaker than many of these other position 4s, but the payoff is that your Invis burst combo is nuts right now. So what Nyx Assassins are doing are frequently getting arcane boots, sometimes just brown boots, into the first item Dagon, and it's not actually griefing. It is a legitimate build, max stun into Dagon, then you're going to max Mind Flare next. So now you're going to run around, find people with your ultimate. You're going to hit them. You're going to Dagon them. You're going to stun them, possibly stun them after the ult first, and then you Dagon them. Then you Mind Flare them. Mind Flare does damage, 1, based on the intelligence of that hero, but 2, based on how much damage you have dealt to that hero. And so we have 3 bursts here. We've got your ultimate, the stun, the Dagon, and then you do extra damage on top of all of that. Plus, once you have Mind Flare maxed out, it is actually relatively low cooldown, so then you can use it again if that hero has somehow survived. You then go for the Shard, which will reduce the enemy's magic resistance so that your burst is even stronger, and then you will go back for the Dagon 5. And again, it's not griefing. You can build Dagon 5, and it's not griefing. How is that not incredible? It is way too good. To start, when you first hit level 6, you first get that Dagon, you can probably only solo kill like squishy supports, squishy cores, but once you start getting more points in Dagon, you get that shard and potentially a really good neutral item like Grove Bow, Ceremonial Robe, but it will show on like the passive bar of the enemy that you're nearby while invis, but don't worry, in pub games a lot of people don't notice that stuff. Enchanted Quiver is really good for more burst as well every 4 seconds to add to the damage for Mind Flare. You will really reach a point where you can just solo kill cores. And if not solo kill, like one other person has to come in with a little bit of extra damage. And I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of popular mobile heroes. So you go scout it out. You say, hey, here's this guy. Come help me gang. And they go, okay, I'm on the way. You kill them on your own, or you get them down to like 1/4 of the health left because you've done 3/4 of the damage yourself. And then like the puck who comes in, like does one auto attack. He's like, oh, sick. I'm contributing. I killed that guy. And you're like, yes, you killed that guy. Way to go, buddy. So really fun build on Nyx. You just have to get through the laning stage, and then you know how the pub games are. Everyone's scattering all over the place. That's why the Nyx Invis ult with the insane burst is really good right now. Last but not least, we have Tiny, and I think I'm going to move Tiny to the S tier. I didn't mean to have our first 2 and last 2 heroes be the S tier, but it's just the way it fell out. So Tiny, there's 2 major changes I would say that he got that helped him out a lot. So first of all his abilities have been buffed a little bit. He really did drop off for a while, so he's been getting some buffs. So the tree grab is better in the laning stage. I've been seeing people buy like a lot of early stats, sometimes 2 gauntlets of strength, to just play the lane with the tree grab, easy denies, easy poke, harass, stuff like that. But then the burst from his avalanche and toss, both of those got buffed. So you're doing more damage when you do the combo. The combo is expensive, but the new mana boots have been very good for him. The build-up from boots and energy booster kind of expensive, you know? He did like the increased mana pool, but between like cheap iron branches, leveling up, and maybe a neutral item, he has enough mana pool for the combo. He really likes the increased mana regen from arcane boots, because now you can use that combo you're leveling up. You can use it to kill people, but you can also use it to farm, like a jungle camp and a wave here, and then arcane boots and the Bassy passives going to get more mana so that you then still have the mana to actually go fight. Previously, you would have the mana pool, sure, for like one fight, or like, oh, I want to farm this camp, but if I do, it's going to take me years to have enough mana to join the next fight or to like continue farming. So he's really enjoying this increased mana regen from arcane boots, which is allowing him to participate more, whether that's farming or fighting, which then speeds up his blink timing, which allows you then to initiate. There's a lot of like popular mobile heroes we've mentioned. You see some like fairly squishy 4 supports in here as well that you can initiate, burst on, toss them back to your team, things like that. You got the Veils on your team, increasing your magic damage. So all of that has made Tiny have a much better early game, in my opinion, and that's why we're seeing him a lot more. For our other tiers, let's just like touch on some heroes. So I think Shadow Demon is potentially better than this. His win rate and like popularity in being played is not amazing, but I think he's a difficult hero. When I think about Shadow Demon, though, there's actually quite a lot of meta heroes that he is good against. So for example, Abaddon and Anti-Mage have been being played more, and if they're on the enemy team and you disrupt them, you create 2 illusions which actually wreck those heroes. Anti-Mage hates having his mana burn. Abaddon gets silenced by his own illusion copies, things like that. So he's really good versus those. He's good versus Spirit Breaker. He is good with like all the Agi heroes that are being picked. Luna, Morphling, if they're on your team, or actually even if they're on the enemy team, right? You create the disruption copies. They're very powerful illusions. The ultimate is very good. It's just, you know, it's always been a good ability. We don't really need to sell it that much. His weakest point is his laning stage, and I think that's kind of what's holding him back compared to many of these other A and S tier position 4s, but I think in the right game, when you get past the laning stage, he is very good. Plus, you have the save to go against, like, you got the Bat Rider, you got Winter Wyvern, Spirit Breakers charging, right? They're all trying to kill your guy on your team, and you save them. Chronosphere from Faceless Void is very popular, right? So I feel like he's good versus many meta heroes, and he's good with many meta heroes. I think he's just struggling in the laning stage compared to others. Many of these other 4s kind of do what they have done historically, so I don't want to talk about them too much here. Doom, so I think he's better as an offlaner, but I think a really nice part of him is that Doom prevents all healing, and when that is the component you want, it doesn't really matter if offlane Doom is using that ability or you as a support Doom are using that ability. So I have been seeing a little bit more support Dooms, and they just kind of plan to doom that key target, and that's all they really need to do. So they don't need to absorb that much farm. A different offlane hero can do it. They still contribute that doom, but you also have like a decent landing stage with the Scorched Earth still like running at heroes and stuff. I think it is a little tricky to pull off compared to other position 4s. Kind of need to know what you're doing, but I have seen it work in quite a lot of games. Downside is that when you're with another melee offlaner, that's kind of awkward. But with a couple of the offlaners who are ranged, for example, Batrider offlane, or like Death Prophet offlane, Viper offlane, I do think he feels quite nice with that. Centaur, I think, has been going up in value as a support. I think position 5 may be a little better for him than position 4, but I've seen it in both, and it seems like pretty decent. Same issue as Doom, which is that the popular offlaners, which, you know, Centaur himself, or like maybe have a Doom offlane with a Centaur support, or like vice versa, right? The double melee just is like a little awkward, and I think that's why there's more ranged popular 4 support right now. But I do think it's pretty decent if you want to do that. Io is good, same as position 5, but he's just tricky to run in pubs, and I think he's a better position 5 anyways. So like in pub games, I might actually rate him like even lower. But I think at the highest level, if they know what they're doing, position 4 Io can work, but I still think position 5 is better. Monkey King. Conceptually, I think Monkey King should be good. Mage Slayer and Diffusal are very popular items right now, which as a 4 support you can build. I also think Orb of Corrosion is quite good, but undervalued, underutilized. I think it's like awkward to build for some heroes, but he is another hero who is good at it because he can apply it all himself. His Q can apply it to everything that it hits, and his ult can apply it to everything it hits. Not just the Orb of Corrosion, but also the Mage Slayer and the Diffusal. So I think all of those reasons sound good. But when I look at his popularity, his win rate, stuff like that, is not great. He is a difficult hero. I have tried him twice myself, and I've screwed it up. I don't think it was the hero. I think it was me. I'm like bad at Monkey King, pulling him out of nowhere. So I feel like it could be good and maybe should go higher, but it hasn't. I don't know. It doesn't. The data doesn't seem to suggest it's that amazing. But maybe it's taking some time to like catch on, and part of it might be the popular heroes, the same way I mentioned for Doom and Centaur and melee heroes in general. It is double melee, which is a little awkward. So maybe if there's a change in like 7.35C and more like ranged off laners become popular, / more melee carries become popular, melee supports become popular, and he can bully them a little easier, maybe we'll see Monkey King stocks go up. You'll notice there's quite a lot of heroes in the C tier, and actually there's even more I could add here, especially the heroes that usually play position 5. You might be asking, like, can I play them as position 4? If you are a new player or you are a core player who is just trying to learn a couple supports to get away with like, okay, if I end up support, I'm going to just play this hero. If you want to play those heroes in position 4, it's fine. They probably fall in the C to D tier. People like Crystal Maiden, Jakiro, stuff like that, right? They work. Some games they actually feel better and they like maybe move up, but in, you know, I'd say the majority of games you'd rather have like one of these heroes on this tier list rather than them, and that's why I feel like many of them go in the C to D tier. And of course there is like an F tier, which like every hero not on here, like the core heroes, like, yeah, I don't want an anti-mage 4, stuff like that. So if you don't see a hero on here that is usually a support, that's probably where they fall. And the reason we see so many in these lower tiers is because right now I think there are a lot of good position 4s like up here. Then there's a lot that work. Like if you want to play them, I have seen many of these heroes play position 4 when you go through like Dota 2 Pro Tracker, Dota Buff, stuff like that. You will see many of these heroes played as 4, and when I see it on my team, I'm like, you know, I don't love it, but it'll probably work, especially as long as the draft bends around it. So like, I'm not tilted if I see any of these heroes in position 4. I think as long as the guy knows what they're doing, playing it, and the team like picks accordingly a little bit around it, not like a terrible combo, it'll be fine. But I'm not like, yes, Zeus 4, like, yes, Earth Spirit 4, he's been nerfed a bunch, but that guy still wants to play him, right? If he's a godly Earth Spirit, totally fine. But if I'm just blindly going with someone who's picked something and I see them pick one of these heroes, I'm like, that guy knows the meta. He's picking the broken heroes. I feel a lot better. So I think there's a lot of flexibility with position 4. There always has been. That's why you see so many heroes like down here, and why you could add a lot of heroes down here. Zach, what about this hero? What about that hero? Tidehunter, stuff like that. yeah, it could work. It's probably C to D tier because there's better heroes who could do a lot of the same stuff you're about to sell me on. Like, oh, he brings negative armor, he brings a slow, he brings like crowd control stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, these guys all do that and they're like better at it. So if you only have a limited hero pool, if you love a certain hero and I haven't mentioned it, they're probably down here in the C to D tier. Snapfire could maybe go up a tier. Her cookie combos with a lot of the melee offlaners, and then her ultimate got buffed, so it brings more damage to throw in when your teammates initiate, and they have like the veil, stuff like that. So I've been seeing pro teams pick her a little bit more. If we want to like bump her up to the B tier, I'd be okay with that. But I will say she still feels a little bit on the weaker side, especially with the coordination required for her to work correctly in your pub games. And you're like, oh, Doom's running at that guy. So like clearly this is the time to cookie. You cookie him as he turns around. He's like, why would you cookie me? I wasn't doing anything. You're like, okay, my bad. Or you're like, you're trying to ult and there's not a stun on your team. And you're like, okay, I just got to blindly hit this ultimate. And Centaur's popular. So if he's on the enemy team, everyone's stampeded running around. You're like trying to land your shots, right? Like that's kind of why like I have her in C tier for now. I think she's just difficult to pull off. But if you are seeing her more in the pro scene, like I think that's why. Like when they have the coordination, like it's there and she moves into B tier. And then Viper, I mentioned the position 5 tier list. I still haven't gotten a chance to play it or see it too much. The win rates don't look promising, but I've heard talks that it's better. And so like maybe it can go up a tier, but I just mentioned here. Despair, this is kind of outdated. I don't know, but like I still have him here just because like it feels weird to have a Despair tier and not put it in here. But like I said, I think many 4s can work. That's why they're C tier. But when a guy picks Wind Ranger and they don't know what they're doing, like it ends up falling into Despair tier pretty easily. But truly, like Ricky's support was absolutely broken. But if you're coming back from a break since that time, he's absolutely not very good right now. So please don't pick him. Same with like Pango, but we could probably remove Pango. I think many of you have seen it at this point. Like Pango is a core. He is somehow an evergreen mid hero. But as a 4 support, he had a brief time as a 4, and it has not come back since then. I'm just going to take him out of here. Lena, popular as a carry and a mid. Sometimes you see her as support. But right now, I think the reasons she is good are all core related, and support Lena is not finding that same success. Her win rates are not very good. A last thing I'll mention, at the start of this patch, 7.35, I was all in on playing Leshrac 4 support quite a lot. You might be wondering where he falls. He got hit with the nerfs. I just don't think he's very good right now. The attack slow that he got, like 50 attack slow on the E, was part of the reason why I felt the laning stage was acceptable. And now that got nerfed all the way down to like 20, I think, at level 1. So that part feels a lot worse. And then the shard and the stun were like, okay, this is why we're playing support Leshrac, because we're not going to build Bloodstone. We're not going to do that stuff. We're going to have a decent laning stage and then this really useful stun plus shard for early team fights. But that also got nerfed. So like that doesn't feel that great either. So like the two things I was kind of using for support Leshrac and then like the Diabolic Edict, that part's still mostly the same actually. But it's the other things that I feel like those got strictly worse. And not a fan of that. So I think his win rates have been really bad. That's why, like, if you want to play him, you probably could get away with it. I'd probably put him in, like, Despair to maybe C tier. But I feel like there's just so many better heroes you could play. Where the hell is he? Why am I blind? There's so many better heroes. I still can't. Oh, there he is. Okay. There's just so many other heroes that I think you could play instead. So I would recommend that. Like, if you guys haven't played Nagers, this shit's so fun. Go try this shit, guys. Or the Dagon build, hilarious. Why not do these instead of, like, struggling through with one of this? Unless you love these heroes, and that's why. That's it. Position 4 tier list done. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in another video. Let me know any extra questions down in the comments, all that.